Donald Trump today invoked what he calls Canada's reliance on the U.S. as he.
According to economists, Trump's threatened tariffs would pose serious challenges to Canada's labor market.
What if I told you the biggest disruption to the North American auto industry is not coming from China or Europe, but from right next door? Canada just unleashed a move that could shake the foundation of American car manufacturing, and most people never saw it coming. This is not just another trade dispute. It is a calculated counterstrike that could bring higher prices, factory shutdowns, and a complete transformation of how electric vehicles are made. For decades, Canada and the United States have worked together, creating one of the world's most tightly connected auto industries. But now, with new tariffs, restrictions, and political maneuvers, that partnership is on the verge of collapse. What happens next could determine the future of car production, prices, and even global economic power. Will American automakers be forced to move their factories? Is there any way to stop this trade war before it spirals out of control? And most importantly, what's Canada planning and what does it mean for you? Stick with us because the answers will surprise you. Canada's unexpected counterattack. This is not just another policy shift or a simple negotiation tactic. This is a full-scale economic retaliation. Canada has decided that enough is enough, and now the effects of this decision are about to ripple through every corner of the automobile industry in North America. The United States imposed aggressive tariffs on Canadian imports, a move that was meant to bolster domestic manufacturing. However, instead of backing down, Canada has responded with countermeasures of its own. The government has enacted sweeping tariffs, targeting critical industries, and the automobile sector is at the top of the list. These actions do not just signal a political disagreement, they threaten to dismantle decades of cooperation and trade between these two nations. The free flow of goods that has defined North American industry is now under attack, and the consequences will be felt far beyond factory floors. This decision marks the end of a long-standing period of economic harmony. For years, Canada and the United States worked together under trade agreements that ensured mutual benefits. However, rising tensions, shifting economic priorities, and political pressures have forced Canada to take an aggressive stance. These tariffs are not merely symbolic. They are designed to strike at the heart of the United States economy. But here's where it gets really shocking. Tesla is about to be hit harder than anyone else. The real reason, Tesla is in Canada's crosshairs. Why is Tesla, the poster child of clean energy, suddenly Canada's biggest target? This is not just about one company. It is about control over the future of the automobile industry. Canada's newly implemented 100% tariff on Tesla vehicles is a deliberate, calculated strike. The question is, why Tesla and not Ford or General Motors? The answer lies in Canada's broader strategy to protect and expand its electric vehicle market. The government has introduced a $10,000 incentive for electric vehicles manufactured domestically, making it more attractive for consumers to buy from Canadian automakers rather than relying on foreign brands. Tesla, which dominates the North American electric vehicle market, poses a direct challenge to Canada's ambition of developing a homegrown electric vehicle industry. This tariff is designed to weaken Tesla's grip and shift consumer preference towards locally produced vehicles. By imposing this tax, Canada is effectively making Tesla models significantly more expensive than their competitors. The government is sending a message. If Tesla wants to sell in Canada, it must start producing within the country. This move forces Tesla into a difficult position. Either establish a production facility in Canada or risk losing a major market. And Tesla is not the only company facing these pressures. Every automaker relying on cross-border trade is suddenly in an extremely vulnerable position. Tesla is just the beginning. This shift in policy could send shockwaves through the entire electric vehicle industry. United States automakers are in crisis mode. Canada's move just threw Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis into full-blown panic mode. For decades, these companies have operated under the assumption that North American trade would remain stable. That assumption no longer holds true. Now, these industry giants must scramble to reassess their supply chains, pricing models, and manufacturing strategies. United States automakers are terrified of Canada's retaliation, and for good reason. The tariffs will not just affect completed vehicles, but also critical components, meaning the cost of production will skyrocket. Every step of vehicle manufacturing, assembly, parts acquisition, and transportation is now fraught with uncertainty. The implications of these tariffs are enormous, particularly for automakers that rely on Canadian-sourced materials and labor. The biggest fear, however, is supply chain disruption. Without a steady and affordable flow of parts, assembly lines will slow down and vehicle prices will rise sharply. This is not just a problem for manufacturers, it is a problem for every consumer looking to buy a car in the coming months. The automobile industry operates on tight margins, and any increase in production costs will inevitably be passed down to the buyer. It is not just the big brands. Every single American car buyer will feel the effects of this decision. The supply chain nightmare has begun. A modern car is not built in one place. It crosses the border multiple times before it reaches a showroom. And now, that process is broken. The automobile supply chain is uniquely vulnerable to tariffs, and Canada's latest move has introduced significant barriers that threaten its efficiency. Vehicle manufacturing is highly dependent on cross-border trade. Parts are often shipped between Canada and the United States multiple times during the assembly process. The introduction of tariffs means that every one of these transactions will now carry additional costs. A steel frame might be manufactured in Canada, transported to the United States for refinement, and then sent back for final assembly. With a 25% tariff applied each time the part moves across the border, the cumulative cost increase is staggering. These tariffs will lead to rising costs and production delays, hitting the most vulnerable automakers the hardest. While larger companies may have the resources to absorb some of these expenses, smaller manufacturers and suppliers will struggle to remain competitive. The domino effect could lead to layoffs, plant closures, and a significant reduction in automobile output across North America. If this does not get fixed, automakers could start shutting down factories in weeks, not months. Trump's tariff war just took a dangerous turn. What started as a simple tariff just escalated into something much bigger. The United States administration, under the direction of the president, implemented a 25% tariff on Canadian imports, triggering immediate economic repercussions. What was initially framed as a protective measure for American industries quickly spiraled into a full-fledged trade war, one that neither country seemed fully prepared to handle. The impact of these tariffs has been felt across multiple sectors, particularly in the automobile industry, where both manufacturers and consumers are facing serious consequences. The increased costs on raw materials and parts have made it more expensive for automakers to assemble vehicles, forcing them to pass these expenses on to buyers. Supply chain disruptions have only exacerbated the problem, with delays in component shipments creating bottlenecks in production. The domino effect of economic retaliation has begun. Canada has swiftly responded with its own countermeasures, targeting key American industries with similarly high tariffs. Businesses that rely on cross-border trade are now caught in the crossfire, with rising costs threatening to cripple operations. Farmers, steel workers, and small business owners on both sides of the border are feeling the squeeze as the trade dispute intensifies. This is no longer just a matter of trade negotiations or economic policy. The consequences of these tariffs are reverberating throughout every facet of the economy, from job security to consumer spending. And if these measures persist, the ripple effects could extend far beyond the automotive sector, disrupting financial markets and eroding confidence in economic stability. This is not just a trade dispute anymore. This could affect every aspect of the economy. The sticker shock. If you are planning to buy a car soon, brace yourself. Prices are about to skyrocket. With tariffs driving up costs for automakers, consumers are now bearing the brunt of these price increases. The added expenses on imported steel, aluminum, and essential auto parts have pushed vehicle prices higher than ever before. Whether you are looking for a brand new model or a used car, the cost of ownership is climbing at an alarming rate. Beyond the sticker price, financing a car is also becoming a major hurdle. With lenders adjusting to market uncertainty, interest rates on auto loans are rising, making monthly payments significantly more expensive. As borrowing costs climb, many potential buyers are being forced to reconsider their purchases, delaying upgrades or opting for less desirable models. The affordability crisis does not stop at new vehicles. The used car market is experiencing similar pressures, with shortages of inventory causing prices to surge. As manufacturers struggle with production delays and reduced output, fewer trade-ins are making their way into dealerships. leading to heightened competition for pre-owned vehicles. Insurance premiums are also expected to rise as replacement parts become more expensive. The combination of these factors is creating a perfect storm for consumers, making car ownership an increasingly costly endeavor. If you think it is bad now, wait until you see the long-term impact on car ownership in America. Canada's secret weapon, the energy card. This trade war is not just about cars. Canada holds a trump card that could shake the entire United States economy. While the focus has largely been on the automobile industry, a much larger economic weapon is looming in the background. Canada is one of the largest suppliers of oil, natural gas, and electricity to the United States, and any disruption in this trade could have devastating consequences. The dependence on Canadian energy is far greater than many realize. Several states in the northern and central regions of the United States rely heavily on Canadian oil to fuel their refineries. A restriction on exports or an increase in tariffs on energy products could send fuel prices soaring, affecting not just individual consumers, but also businesses that rely on transportation and logistics. The natural gas trade is just as crucial. With colder months approaching, any restrictions on Canadian natural gas could drive up heating costs for millions of households. Industries that require large amounts of energy, such as manufacturing and agriculture, would see production costs skyrocket, leading to further economic instability. Even electricity is a significant factor. Several states import hydroelectric power from Canada, and any increase in costs could strain the energy grid and result in higher utility bills. If Canada decides to use this leverage, Americans could start feeling the pain in their wallets overnight. Washington is in chaos. The escalating economic tensions have sparked intense debates within the political landscape of the United States. While some lawmakers stand firmly behind the tariffs, insisting they are necessary to protect domestic industries, others warn of the long-term damage they could inflict. The division has created significant infighting within Congress and the administration itself. Several political figures are pushing for urgent negotiations to de-escalate the trade conflict, arguing that the costs far outweigh the benefits. Business leaders and trade associations are also applying pressure, warning of potential job losses and economic downturns if the situation continues unchecked. On the other side, trade hardliners are advocating for an even tougher stance, believing that only through firm measures can the United States gain the upper hand in international trade. The result is a chaotic policy environment where no clear resolution seems to be in sight. Big business is not sitting idle either. Major corporations and industry leaders are lobbying aggressively to minimize the impact of tariffs. Auto manufacturers, energy companies, and retail giants are all involved in behind-the-scenes efforts to negotiate exemptions and policy adjustments. As the government grapples with these competing interests, uncertainty looms over financial markets and economic forecasts. Each new announcement or policy shift sends ripples through global trade networks, adding to the unpredictability. The government is running out of time to act, but the damage is already spreading. The global fallout, who wins and who loses? The battle between Canada and the United States has created a vacuum, and China and Europe are wasting no time stepping in. While North America wrestles with tariffs and supply chain disruptions, China is leveraging its dominance in battery production to expand its control over the electric vehicle market. With the vast majority of the world's battery components coming from Chinese factories, automakers worldwide are looking to secure long-term deals with Chinese suppliers. European automakers are also moving strategically, positioning themselves as the stability North America lacks. German and French companies, which have long been investing in electric vehicle technology, are now marketing themselves as the premier alternative to disrupted American automakers. With reliable government support, strong labor markets, and streamlined production processes, European brands are gaining ground in markets that were once dominated by North American companies. The advantage extends beyond manufacturing. China is rapidly deploying charging infrastructure across major cities, ensuring its domestic market remains ahead in adoption rates. At the same time, European nations are implementing stricter emissions regulations, pushing consumers and businesses alike toward electric mobility. With North America facing production slowdowns, these two economic giants are poised to cement themselves as the future leaders of electric transportation. Mexico's position: will it stay neutral or take sides? As trade tensions escalate between the United States and Canada, Mexico finds itself caught in the middle of a delicate balancing act. The nation has long been a manufacturing hub for North American automakers, with major production facilities for brands like General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis. However, with supply chains in chaos and economic uncertainty looming, Mexico must decide whether to continue aligning with its northern partners or seek new alliances. One of the biggest considerations for Mexico is its trade relationship with both nations. The country benefits from agreements with the United States and Canada, but the ongoing dispute could force it to make tough choices. Some industry analysts believe Mexico will use this moment to negotiate better terms for its automotive exports, leveraging its role as an essential supplier of parts and assembly services. Others suggest that if tensions between the United States and Canada persist, Mexico might strengthen its ties with European and Asian automakers to reduce its dependence on the North American market. Mexico's labor force is another critical factor. The country offers a competitive labor market that attracts global manufacturers. However, if tariffs and supply chain issues persist, Mexican workers may face layoffs and factory slowdowns. The government has remained largely silent on its long-term strategy, carefully observing how trade negotiations unfold. But one thing is clear: Mexico is in a position to either capitalize on this crisis or suffer deeply from its consequences. The economic disaster unfolding in small towns beyond corporate boardrooms and government negotiations, the real impact of this trade war is being felt in small towns across North America. Many communities rely on the automotive industry as their primary economic engine, and with factories slowing down or shutting down altogether, workers are struggling to make ends meet. Businesses that rely on manufacturing employees, such as restaurants, shops, and local service providers, are also feeling the pressure. In towns where automakers are the biggest employers, layoffs have already begun. Workers who have spent decades building vehicles now face uncertainty about their future. Mortgage payments, medical expenses, and daily necessities are becoming harder to afford. In many cases, entire neighborhoods are watching their local economies crumble as jobs disappear overnight. Small business owners are equally affected. With fewer people receiving steady paychecks, spending within these communities has plummeted. Local stores that once thrived on foot traffic from factory workers are experiencing record low sales. Some businesses have already closed their doors, unable to survive the economic downturn. The ripple effects of these closures extend far beyond any single industry, weakening the financial stability of entire regions. Community leaders are pleading for government intervention, but relief efforts have been slow. Some initiatives are in place to provide temporary financial assistance, but they do little to address the long-term uncertainty facing these workers. As the trade war drags on, the fear among small-town residents is not just about lost income, but about whether their communities will ever recover from the economic devastation. The auto parts shortage, factories grinding to a halt. One of the most immediate and visible consequences of this trade war is the growing shortage of auto parts, leading to production delays across North America. Modern vehicles are built using a complex supply chain where components travel across borders multiple times before final assembly. Now, with tariffs and trade restrictions in place, that process is under immense strain. Essential parts such as semiconductors, steel frames, and electronic components are becoming harder to source. As a result, production lines are slowing down, and some factories have temporarily shut down operations. Without a steady flow of materials, manufacturers are unable to meet demand, leading to backlogs in orders and rising vehicle prices. For consumers, this means longer wait times for new vehicles and higher prices for both new and used cars. Dealerships are struggling to maintain inventory, and even routine car repairs are becoming more expensive due to the scarcity of replacement parts. The automotive repair industry, which relies on a steady supply of components, is now experiencing widespread delays, frustrating car owners who are left waiting weeks or even months for essential fixes. Manufacturers are scrambling to find solutions. Some companies are shifting production to different locations, while others are seeking alternative suppliers outside North America. However, these adjustments take time and add significant costs. In the meantime, automakers must navigate a precarious landscape where every additional delay risks further economic fallout. The longer this auto parts crisis continues, the more severe the consequences will be. If no resolution is reached, automakers may be forced to make deeper cuts, laying off even more workers and closing additional production plants. The trade war that began as a political dispute is now a full-blown industry crisis, and the damage is growing with each passing day. The future of electric vehicles, boom or collapse. The electric vehicle industry has long been seen as the future of transportation. Governments worldwide have pushed for the transition away from fossil fuel-powered vehicles, and automakers have invested billions into developing electric cars that cater to an increasingly eco-conscious market. However, with the intensifying trade war between Canada and the United States, that future is suddenly uncertain. The costs associated with manufacturing electric vehicles are rising rapidly due to tariffs on key materials such as lithium, nickel, and aluminum, all of which are essential for battery production. This increase in production costs has a direct impact on consumers. Electric vehicles were already priced at a premium compared to traditional gasoline-powered cars, and additional tariffs will only make them more expensive. The affordability of electric vehicles has always been a major hurdle in widespread adoption, and with trade restrictions raising the price even further, fewer people may be willing to make the switch. Automakers, in turn, could be forced to scale back their plans for expansion into the electric vehicle market, slowing progress on the shift toward greener transportation. The shift to electric vehicles is not just a matter of affordability, but also of infrastructure. Charging networks must continue to expand to accommodate the growing number of electric vehicles on the road. If manufacturers scale back their investment due to rising costs, infrastructure projects could stall as well, creating a bottleneck that slows the industry's momentum. Without a reliable charging network, consumer confidence in electric vehicles could wane, leading to a potential collapse of the sector before it reaches its full potential. Despite these challenges, some argue that the trade war may ultimately benefit domestic production. Canada, which is rich in battery materials and clean energy sources, could position itself as a key supplier of electric vehicle components, reducing its reliance on imports. If Canada successfully establishes itself as a leader in electric vehicle production, it could create an industry that competes directly with the United States, reshaping the North American auto market. Will Tesla be forced to move production? Tesla has built its reputation as a disruptor in the automotive industry, pioneering electric vehicle technology and reshaping consumer expectations. However, its reliance on a global supply chain makes it particularly vulnerable to trade conflicts. With Canada imposing heavy tariffs on Tesla and the cost of importing materials from the United States rising, Tesla may have no choice but to consider relocating some of its production facilities to Canada. A move to Canada would not be unprecedented. Many automakers have shifted production to countries that offer financial incentives, lower costs, or a more favorable trade environment. Canada, with its abundant natural resources, skilled workforce, and potential government incentives, could become an attractive option for Tesla. Additionally, moving production closer to key resources, such as lithium and nickel, could help stabilize supply chains and reduce dependency on external suppliers. However, relocating production is a complex and costly endeavor. Tesla's factories are highly specialized, requiring significant investments in equipment, labor training, and logistics infrastructure. Moving to Canada would not be an overnight decision, and even if Tesla were to pursue this option, it would take years to fully transition operations. The company would also need to navigate potential regulatory hurdles and negotiate with both Canadian and American officials to secure favorable trade agreements. If Tesla does make the move, it could set a precedent for other automakers looking to escape the trade war's financial strain. A shift in production from the United States to Canada would have major economic implications, potentially leading to job losses in the American auto industry and further weakening domestic manufacturing. In contrast, Canada could see a surge in investment, employment growth, and a stronger position in the global auto market. Is there any way to stop this trade war? As tensions continue to rise between Canada and the United States, many are questioning whether a resolution is possible. Trade disputes have historically been resolved through negotiation, but the current political climate makes finding common ground difficult. The United States government remains steadfast in its approach to economic nationalism, while Canada is unwilling to back down from its efforts to protect its industries. Without intervention, the situation could continue to escalate, leading to even greater economic disruption. One possible solution is a new trade agreement that addresses the concerns of both nations. The automotive industry is deeply intertwined between Canada and the United States, and both countries have a vested interest in maintaining a stable trade relationship. A revised trade deal that includes provisions for fair competition, supply chain protections, and tariff reductions could help ease tensions and restore economic stability. Pressure from businesses and consumers could also play a role in ending the trade war. Automakers, industry leaders, and trade organizations are already lobbying for a resolution, warning that continued economic conflict will harm both economies. Consumers facing rising prices and limited vehicle options may also push for action, demanding that their governments find a solution that allows trade to continue without excessive costs. The global economic landscape may also influence the outcome of the trade war. As China and European nations gain dominance in the electric vehicle market, North America risks falling behind. If Canadian and American leaders recognize the urgency of maintaining competitiveness, they may be more willing to negotiate a trade resolution that allows both nations to remain key players in the evolving auto industry. But it is like the saying, it's always easier said than done. What do you think about this? Let's know in the comments.